I'm going to show you how to do another tutorial on creating a double exposure using a tree to come out of Giselle's hair area. So we open our raw file, make sure that we've done all of our settings as we want them to be getting the best detail out of our raw image here in Camera Raw. When you're done, open it as an object in Photoshop. And we have Giselle here, and we'll click select subject, and we have this selection around her. We'll click layer mask to get her on a transparent background. Go into Google and click tools, make sure you have a large sized image. Find a tree that has sky in the background. It's quite important that this has sky because we'll be playing with the lights against the darks. I did copy image and I used Command V to paste it into Photoshop. Let's see here. What we're going to do is we're going to click Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal so that we get this brighter side of the tree. It's going to be placed in this area of her hair. And if we take the opacity, we can lower it down to 50 to get a better idea of exactly where it's going. Again, the opacity is over here. Helps you to find your placement. Okay. We can always change it later, but we'll stick to this right now. We can bring that opacity back up to 100%. So normally what we would do to create our double exposure is go to either lighten or screen, depending on what works best for your image. In this case, I'll choose lighten. And we would normally hold Option down and create a clipping mask out of it. But this time we want our double exposure to blend a little bit more, where her hair extends outwards to the tree. So we're gonna use Command J to duplicate this layer. And wait, before we do that, actually, let's go back. And I want to focus just on this image for a second. And let's delete the sky. So we'll click Select Sky. And we now have our sky selected. And let's make that, give it a layer mask. And we want to reverse the layer mask. So on your layer mask, click Command I to invert it. So now the sky is photoshopped out of the background. And then we'll turn the portrait back on. And you can see it's starting to come together a little bit more. But we want to delete this area over here without masking out any other parts of the tree or her face. So by holding Command, I'm going to click the layer mask, the portrait layer mask, outline that so we know where not to touch. And then we're going to click the tree layer mask again. And we want to make sure that we inverse our selection because we'll be only getting rid of what's inside. So let's bring our brush tool to 100%. We're going to hold Command Shift I. And then now we have everything else masked out except for what's inside of the portrait outline. So then we can erase this part of the tree. Oops, erase a little bit too much. Use a black brush tool to get rid of that part of the tree, and might as well get rid of some areas over here. Get out all those harsh edges. All right, looking much, much better. Okay. This looks great so far. So here's the deal though. If we go over here and we add a solid color, a solid white background, the issue is that the lighten blending mode is also applying towards the white background, and a clipping mask is not going to solve that issue. So what we have to do is we have to add another layer with Command J. So we'll call this one lighten. And then for this one, we're going to change the blending mode probably to multiply. Let's try that. So that's a multiply blend mode. Okay, so multiply is going to act more on bringing out information onto the lights, whereas lighten is going to bring out the information from the darks. Lighten lightens the darks. Multiply is going to add information to more of those midtones and highlights, such as her skin and the shirt. So what we're going to do next, while this is selected, let's go ahead and command click the portrait layer mask again, just to make sure that we're not going beyond the area that we want to go. And go back to the multiply layer mask, use the brush tool, and let's use the brush tool to erase the areas that we don't want that extra layer of the tree to be in. Okay, that's looking better. You can see how the layer mask is looking right now. So more or less, that's what we're looking at as of right now. Please take your time to look for these harsh edges and make sure that all of those harsh edges are gone. If it's not erasing, it might be on the lighten layer. So going back to lighten, let's go ahead and erase those harsh edges. What we could also do is we can lower the opacity of the brush. No, not for the harsh edges, but we can lower the opacity of the brush in case we want to help feather through the blending. Likewise, what we could also do, click Command T, and I'm just going to pull this all the way down to the bottom of her hair. Hold Command and stretch that downwards. And I think that's going to look a little bit better, but I realize it needs to mix with the other tree, so let's do this. Hold Shift, click both of these layers, Command G to group them together, Command T to transform, to set them up as a transform, and they're grouped together, so they're going to be stretched out together. Okay, that's better. Click Enter when you're done, and we have a pretty clean look so far. So there's going to be a few little areas which might not look so well. So that is up to you to go in between these two different layer masks and use the brush tool to try to blend them better. What you could also do, you can make a clone stamp above, and you can use your clone stamp tool, click S for that, hold Option to find your anchor point, and make yourself an addition where you can now move it down here, rotate it, and help it get pieced together a little bit better down there. And then you can also play with the blending modes, see if it helps. Next up, let's try to get the trees blended a little bit better because the sky does fade from a very white to a very light blue. Click your levels and pull your whites in just a little bit. That's going to help your whites blend a little bit better. And now we have this tree sticking out. Oh, it looks like that's okay for now. So that's the basic idea of how you create your double exposure between your lights and your darks. To stylize it, we can either click the black and white layer or the gradient layer if you want more of a contrasty black and white. And let's click our channel color balance up here. Let's click shadows, maybe add some blues to the shadows, for example. Maybe a little bit more cyan. And then let's do a balance of warm and cool. So for our highlights, we'll add some reds, maybe some yellows. The midtones, I'm just messing around here. No actual plan right now. And then we can change the blending mode of our color balance to have a few different effects. We can lower the opacity of that. We can even lower the opacity of the gradient map as well if you want, or we can use the gradient map and change the blending mode. Maybe for the levels, let's see here. So one part that I'm not really liking so much is I can see the shape of her head coming through the trees over there, and that doesn't really make me feel like I did a good job blending the tree all the way. So we're gonna come back down into our layers, and we're going to command click on the portrait layer mask. And then we want to blend that better into our tree. So with our brush tool B, we are going to try to figure out which layer it is that we're having the blending issues. I'm going to command Z, and I'm going to lower the strength of my brush tool. And actually, I'm going to click command D to deselect and just see what happens if I go there. Not working for me. Let's try this layer. It's also not working for me. If I use white, no. You know what I'll do instead? I'm going to come back to the actual portrait layer mask. I'm going to use the brush tool and just take it out from here. Let's lower the brush tool. Yeah, by lowering the brush strength, then that helps to blend it a little bit better. Okay. Let's turn back on our black and white and our color balance. This is looking really awesome. The last step that I want to do now is click C for the crop tool, and I want to, I want to click, let's try 5x7. These are some printing presets, and I'm gonna come and fix the cropping of this image so that way there's much better composition. Click enter when you're done, and voila, we have a blended double exposure.